Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, your host, once again, bringing you another edition of the TTSP, Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Started it in January of 2016, and it has been a fun ride. Back again, February 23rd, 2017, I believe that's what day it is today. This year has gone by. Actually, it's February 24th. This year has gone by so fast so far. A lot of stuff going on. Can't keep up with it, to be honest. But very excited to get off to today's start of part 2. Part 1, I talked about what the Cleveland Browns should do. That should have been a preview for what's to come for part 2. The quarterback carousel of 2017, the offseason, the number one question: where will Tony Romo play? Where will Mitch Trubisky go? Where will Deshaun Watson go? Where will Tyrod Taylor go? Where will all these quarterbacks end up? And where will Jimmy Garoppolo go? That is a question that I answered in the part 1 episode of today's show. I think Jimmy G will end up as a Cleveland Brown. I think a draft day trade in a perfect world for the Browns and the Patriots would be made, in which Jimmy Garoppolo heads from New England to the dog days of Cleveland. They've already made a trade with Cleveland once, sending Jamie Collins from the Patriots to the Browns. I think they're going to do it again, break bread, have some business dealings, sending Jimmy Garoppolo to Cleveland. That is the first one out of the way. Where will Tony Romo end up? Rumor has it that the Cowboys are going to try to cut Tony Romo to give him his pick as to where he wants to go. I think that that's a really stupid idea because the return on a quarterback like Tony Romo in today's NFL and today's market would be huge for the Dallas Cowboys. But as a gesture, business gesture, supposedly, Dallas is looking to send Tony Romo to the free agency world. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. But if I were to pick where I think Tony Romo should go, it would definitely be across the way in Houston, playing for the Houston Texans, an AFC team, a team that has pieces together. They made a bad move deciding to bring in Brock Osweiler on a big contract. That big contract cannot go away. You would be paying your backup quarterback an exponential amount of money, but Tony Romo would be on a short-term deal, 2-3 years. You really only need Brock Osweiler this next year. You can cut Brock Osweiler after this year. Let him be the backup to Tony Romo. Learn from Tony Romo. Worst-case scenario is that Tony Romo comes in, plays very well. Worst case scenario is if Tony Romo comes in and gets hurt, I should say, you still have Brock Osweiler, you're back to square one. But if Tony Romo comes in and plays well, best case scenario, you have Brock Osweiler waiting in the wings, learning from a quarterback like Tony Romo, learning what to do, what not to do as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think that DeAndre Hopkins needs a quarterback like Tony Romo. I think that combination would be fantastic. You have Lamar Miller in the backfield. He did some decent things last year for the Texans. That would be the best fit. The defense is there. J.J. Watt is coming back. Jadeveon Clowney has really come into his own as a NFL player this year. So I think that Tony Romo to the Houston Texans would be the best fit for Tony Romo. There's reports of him being linked to Denver. I don't see that happening. I see it as Denver invested a first-round draft choice in Paxton Lynch last year. Simeon did some decent things last year. Let Simeon and Lynch battle it out again in year 2 since Peyton Manning's retirement. The veteran route was already done by Denver. They're looking to get younger at the position, not older. Tony Romo obviously is older, and he has some dings and dents in his body. Houston is in desperation mode. They overpaid for Brock Osweiler, gave him way too much money before they even had the chance to sit down with him, and it has been a real mistake. Bob McNair has even said as much, the owner of the Houston Texans. So, that being the case, Tony Romo stays close to home, stays close to where he's lived, I should say, while he played for the Dallas Cowboys, and now he's heading to another conference. The AFC dynamic of it, too. Dallas won't have to play Tony Romo. They won't have to go through Tony Romo in the playoffs or the regular season if he is on a AFC team, unless the NFL schedule people decide that it's best fit that they play against each other on prime time, which I would get my popcorn ready, in the words of Terrell Owens, and sit down on the couch, watch that, take that in. Dak versus Tony, Cowboys versus Texans, it sells itself. So that is my take on where Tony and Jimmy G will go. What will happen to Buffalo Bills quarterback Tyrod Taylor? You know, everybody knows my opinion on Tyrod Taylor. I think he's got real questionable skills as far as a passer. I don't know if he is the best passer in the NFL. Definitely one of the lower tier passers in the National Football League. His skill as a runner, his elusiveness, his shiftiness in the pocket that allows him to extend plays, his escapability is off the charts. That is what makes Tyrod Taylor a interesting starting quarterback in the National Football League. Not a franchise quarterback, but an interesting gamble as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Originally, I thought that it would be best if the Bills were to move on, but the Bills do not know which way is up. They don't know which way they would even turn if a franchise quarterback was staring them in the face. So that being said, I think Tyrod Taylor is going to stay. I think the Bills are going to keep up on his option. He's been working in the Bills facilities, rehabbing his groin and his leg injury that he had. So I think he's going to stay. I think Rick Dennison sealed that fate for Tyrod Taylor, the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens at the time, while Tyrod Taylor was the backup there to Joe Flacco. That makes sense. Makes sense for Tyrod to stay, given that Rick Dennison knows quite a lot about Tyrod Taylor, being that he coached him for a time in Baltimore. Obviously, as well, Rick Dennison's been around a lot of great quarterbacks the last few years, Peyton Manning being one of them, Joe Flacco being another. So maybe they could try to develop this skill set of Tyrod Taylor a little bit. Maybe they could try to make him more of a pocket passer. Who knows? You know, I think even if they were to try, some guys can throw, some guys can't. Tyrod can't make every NFL throw necessary like a Phillip Rivers or a Tony Romo or an Aaron Rodgers can. He's more of an elusive, scrambling type quarterback, and I don't know if that has proven to work for the Buffalo Bills yet, but the Bills do not know which way is up. Doug Whaley is the GM that he is, and I don't think he has the necessary resources upstairs, so to speak, to come up with a better option than Tyrod Taylor, to find a better option than Tyrod Taylor, even if that option was staring him in the face. That being said, moving on from Tyrod Taylor to Mitch Trubisky, the University of North Carolina quarterback, rated as one of the top-tier quarterbacks in this year's draft class. Mike Mayock has him pretty high. All the draft experts, so to speak, have him up pretty high. I'm somewhere in the middle. I know a lot about Mitch Trubisky, being that I watch North Carolina on the regular. He's I'm in the middle on Mitch Trubisky. I don't know if he's more Big Ben or Matt Ryan, or if he's Alex Smith. There's somewhere in the middle there. I've seen shades of both for Mitch Trubisky, 50 shades of Mitch Trubisky, so to speak. I don't know what we will get from a quarterback like Mitch Trubisky from the NCAA to the NFL. We could see more Matt Ryan. We could see more Alex Smith, where he's shown some conservative playing style in the NCAA. It'll be interesting. I think if I was a betting man, I would put Mitch Trubisky in San Francisco as the franchise quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan can work with a guy like him. He reminds me a lot of Matt Ryan when he's at his best. When he's at his worst, he reminds me of an Alex Smith. And Alex Smith is not a bad quarterback. Alex Smith has been a starting quarterback for the last decade. So that's not really a bad comparison. It's not a knock on Mitch Trubisky. I think he could be an NFL quarterback for the next 5 to 8 years. But It depends on the fit, and I think the best fit would be San Francisco. I think second overall. They're trying to get a brand towards their franchise. They're trying to rebrand their franchise. The best way to do it, put Colin Kaepernick behind them, is by drafting a quarterback like Mitch Trubisky at second overall. That is where I have him going in my mock draft. It makes sense to me. I think Kyle Shanahan could fit him into his offense very well. We'd see some similarities between him and Matt Ryan. We'd see some similarities in the way he's used between him and RG3 back in years past in Washington. So, he's worked with several different types of quarterbacks: Johnny Manziel, Robert Griffin III, and Matt Ryan. And I think he would love to work with Mitch Trubisky. That's the feeling I get with Mitch is heading to San Fran. Deshaun Watson, where will he go? The Clemson quarterback, where will he go? That's a real question mark. There's a lot of teams that might need a quarterback. I could honestly see a guy like Deshaun Watson going to a team like the Chicago Bears. They need to rebrand their team very much so. Chicago's a destination. The Jets is a destination where he could end up. Arizona is a destination where he could end up. There's a lot of different places he could go. Buffalo is one of those places where he could go. There's a lot of different options in waiting for Deshaun Watson. The best fit, I would say, would be the Chicago Bears. They're looking to rebrand their team. John Fox needs to win now, so to speak. I think Deshaun Watson, I don't know if Deshaun Watson helps them win now, but I do know that he would be somebody that might allow John Fox to get a little bit of a longer leash as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson going to Chicago. That would be the best case scenario for Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of pieces there on offense. Alshon Jeffrey, Jordan Howard. You have Cameron Meredith doing some decent things last year. So that would be the best case scenario. And that's a segue to Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler could be an option realistically for San Francisco as a guy that could mentor Mitch Trubisky on what to do, what not to do. Jay Cutler could also be an option for Buffalo if they decide not to keep Tyrod Taylor. Next option is Deshaun Kaiser, the Notre Dame quarterback. This is the quarterback that I see maybe falling in most draft boards heading into the 2017 NFL draft. He's a guy that I like. He's a guy that I admire. I think that he would be a best fit, best case scenario for the New York Jets. It really depends where Deshaun Watson goes, who goes first between Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Kaiser. That is a big question mark. If Watson goes first, he'd go to Chicago. If Kaiser goes second, he'd go to the Jets, and vice versa. So it'll be either the Jets or the Chicago Bears. If there's anybody that I'm not thinking about, the one guy that just popped into my head is Ryan Fitzpatrick. I could see him maybe going to a Pittsburgh Steelers if Landry Jones heads out of town, maybe back to Cincinnati if the Cincinnati Bengals heads come together and they decide that A.J. McCarron should be traded. That's an option. McCarron maybe possibly going to a Kansas City or somewhere of that nature, maybe in Arizona, somewhere like that. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I just gave you my take on a lot in an action-packed 15-minute episode. Where should Jay Cutler go? Where could Tony Romo go? Where could Jimmy Garoppolo go? All the quarterbacks in the perpetual quarterback carousel of 2017. Where should they go? I just covered that in this part. Listen to it. Rewind it if you're just tuning in live. Thank you very much. And God bless. Enjoy the rest of your day. This February is going by fast. That was the Thomas Take. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks for tuning in.